If you've ever wondered what a business structure actually looks like for a company at each stage of its growth, then this video series is for you. We're going to look at each phase, starting from solopreneur, one person, to micro-sized business, small-sized business, medium-sized business, and large-size organization. We're going to uncover each phase, have a look at what kind of structure works for each stage of that company's growth, and we're going to look at the challenges that they face at each phase, as well as what they need to do to overcome those challenges so that they can grow their business to that next phase. All that and a whole bunch more in this video series. In the first video, this one right here, we're going to be looking at the solopreneur. That's where we're starting. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go. Hit it. Hang on just a minute here, Tama. Are you telling me that I need to do an organizational chart and structure for just one person? Are you having a laugh? Are you wasting my time? No, I'm not wasting your time. This is actually one of the fundamental reasons why a solopreneur actually gets burnt out and overwhelmed, because you don't actually realize how many functions are essential to keep that business operating. And what you're trying to do is the work of 10, 15, 20, sometimes 30 people or more just by yourself. And that's why it will lead to overwhelm. So the sooner that we begin to understand what the essential functions of that business are and what the structure is, then you can understand that I'm just wearing the hat of that other function or that other role. And when it becomes financially feasible, I can then hire that role in. So let's have a look at what a business structure for a solopreneur would actually look like. Any business really has four main fundamental pillars. The first one really is the why you exist, the purpose. What is it that you're doing? How are you going to go about doing it? What kind of strategy are you going to put down? And that usually we refer to as the CEO pillar. Then comes the next pillar, which is basically your product pillar. The product pillar, regardless of whether you're a product-based business or a service-based business, that's where you would be actually developing your products or services, producing them, and then distributing them. Then we have the next pillar, which is the customer pillar. After all, a business is really about identifying potential customer pain points or needs, and then coming up with a solution via a product or a service and making sure that they receive it and it actually solves their problem and they're happy and they come back again, or they refer you to other people so that you can actually grow your business. Well, the functions inside that customer pillar would typically be the marketing, sales, and after sales. Now, the final pillar is the biggest one of them all, not necessarily the most important. They're all very important, and without any one of them, the business will not function properly. But this final pillar is actually your business pillar, which means that it does what it needs to do to make the business function and operate effectively and efficiently. Now, within that business pillar, we have several functions that we need to sort of make sure are there. First of all, you are structured legally and you've got a legal structure. You need to also make sure and ensure that you've got enough cash in the bank. So you're looking at your accounts and your finances and your budgets. You're also looking at your systems and operations so that all of the operations and the systems in the other two units, in terms of your product pillar and your customer pillar, are operating sort of efficiently, effectively, and things are being documented so that they can remain consistent. Yes, there are a lot of functions there. And yes, as a solopreneur, you will be doing all of them. And that is why a lot of the challenges that happen revolve around overwhelm and burnout for the business owner. And that's not what I want for you. So essentially, yes, you're one person. And what you're doing is you're slap bang in the middle between all of the sort of the product unit or pillar, the customer pillar, as well as the business pillar. Now, this is where you will fit in. You might have, or you might hire an assistant to help you on some of the admin stuff, but predominantly you're doing everything else. So you're doing the marketing, you're doing the sales, you're doing the product development, you're doing the finances. You might hire out an accountant for end of year accounts, but essentially you're operating as a one-person business. So in no particular order, let's have a look at some of the challenges that a solopreneur-based business would actually face. The first one we've already touched on before, which is overwhelm and burnout. So I'm going to move swiftly along because it will become very evident why overwhelm and burnout happens as we go through the list. The next several points, actually, I'm going to clump together because they're all interrelated with each other, and that's lack of funding, poor cash flow, and underpricing. We have lack of funding, and because we have a lack of funding, we can't really get investment until we prove that the business is going to work, or even get a business loan until we have a really solid business model. And it becomes quite challenging to actually raise funds at the very early stages of a business. That then actually results in the sort of the lack of cash flow as well, because you are investing a lot of your time and energy to develop the product or service, as well as making sure that the business is set up correctly. But the third one, which is underpricing, that I've just spoken about, is actually not really related as a result of those two, but actually it's a fundamental thing, because the mindset of the solopreneur at the beginning, typically, and it's not for everyone, but typically at the very beginning, they cannot justify asking a much higher price than other existing businesses out there that seem to have a lot more experience and seem to have been in the business for a long time. And then we come in as solopreneurs and we say, I really don't want to ask for too much money because I need as much money. And if I charge more, then I'm going to get rid of more people and not enough people are going to come. And it's a vicious cycle that just keeps going on. And then we end up really underpricing. And that damages us both in the short term, medium term, and potentially the long term as well, if the business really fails to start breaking out of those traps and challenges and not grow. So the next one is really having an ad hoc approach to everything and not really having any systems to speak of or processes. And that's because we, as business owners, typically are visionaries, where we've come up with a lot of great ideas that we're going to do, but we are running around out of desperation sometimes. And what we actually end up doing is making ad hoc decisions, grabbing ideas from here and there and whatever the sort of the grapevine has actually told you. And you've heard that Facebook ads are great, and you've heard that this, and you try this and you try that, and there's no consistency or any kind of real system behind what you're actually trying to do. Those systems are not there. So the things that actually work randomly are not recorded so that you can't stay consistent. And the things that actually don't work are also not recorded. And there's no real plan about trying to solve all of these things. So lack of systems to speak of, as well as really ad hoc planning and execution. That's another one of the typical challenges that you'll get. Not having a solid vision or a strategy. Even though we're visionaries, we might not still have a look sort of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line and say, where is this business actually heading? And what kind of strategy are we going to put in place to make everything coherent so that we're not ad hoc planning or executing? And what are the things that we really need to focus on to navigate our way through the obstacles that we might sort of encounter on the way? And how do we sort of maintain that focus to get to our destination? And that strategy is usually not there at the beginning of a business journey, especially at a solopreneur, because simply speaking, that actually is one of the fundamental roles of you as a business owner, or you as a CEO of your own business. But we don't have the time to do all of that, because we've got to develop the products or services. We've got to deliver them. We've got to go and find clients and market to them and sell to them. We've got to do our accounts, and if we get time to do that, and we've got to do this and that and the other. And there's a whole bunch of things that we need to do. And that's why we get caught up in just actually executing the tactical stuff that needs to happen on a day-to-day. And we don't really sit there working on the business. So lack of having a solid vision or strategy is the next one. Let's have a look at the next one after that. Because we don't actually have a solid strategy or a vision, we don't also necessarily identify a unique value proposition at this stage. And that is actually quite fundamental at the early stages, to really separate yourself from the competition, to say, here is my competitive advantage and this is what's going to make me different, which will allow you to price higher. A lack of unique value proposition, as well as the lack of strategy, as well as the lack of planning, as well as the lack of systems. So we've got a pattern here which is beginning to form, and this results in a lot of mindset issues in terms of, am I able to do this? This is way too much for me. I cannot do this. Who am I? Look at the other businesses. Look how they're performing. And then we begin to doubt ourselves, and then we start running into a whole bunch of emotional roller coaster, and that's not how you should be running a business. You should be running a business, discipline and patience, rather than sort of fear and greed and emotions and mindset and sort of being really afraid that the business is going to collapse. So these are the sort of the turmoils, and no wonder when you look at all of this, that's why we get overwhelmed at that stage, and that's why we end up potentially burning ourselves out. So those are some of the key challenges. There are other ones like delegating, because it doesn't really apply as much at that stage because the person or the solopreneur is doing a lot of the work themselves, but actually they should be beginning to delegate out, even if they are outsourcing to virtual assistants or outsourcing certain parts of the marketing process. There are elements there that should be delegated out if they are tedious and low value. And then also one of the key challenges is as you begin to expand and scale, hiring people becomes a challenge, and hiring processes, and actually resistance to hiring first. And then when you actually get to hiring, you end up hiring the wrong people because you have the wrong systems or processes. So a whole bunch of challenges there, but that actually is not so difficult to tackle. And what we're going to be doing in the next video is we're going to actually start breaking this down in terms of what needs to be done so that we can actually overcome these challenges and grow to the next phase of the business. I'll see you in the next video, coming right up.